really want to avoid the family soap opera of dying without a will. All of that to come, but first, the very latest Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. We begin in the east of Pretoria, where hostage negotiators and the Special Task Force Police are currently on the scene, where a police officer is holding his family captive in a house in Mamelodi. Officers say the man, who is armed, has been in the house since 8 o'clock this morning and has fired shots. Gauteng Police spokesperson Brenda Moridili believes the ordeal has been caused by a family dispute. She says the scene remains active.
At this stage, we know that he has requested that the media must be called there, and that he's asking for the police to give him a loudspeaker. But as for why, what is the reason that he's holding his family hostage, it is not clear as yet. We believe that there was a family dispute.
We move to the Western Cape, where Interim Police Minister Feroz Kachalia says the country needs a serious plan to combat gangs and organised crime syndicates. Kachalia is visiting crime-ridden areas in the Cape Flats today, including Mitchell's Plain and the country's murder capital, Mfuleni. The acting police minister has been getting first-hand accounts from residents on how gang-related violence and drugs have turned their lives upside down. Maisenberg, Atlantis and Athlone have also recently seen an uptick of gun violence. Ntutuzela Nene has more.
Interim Police Minister Feroz Kachalia says the country's plan to fight organized crime syndicates needs serious improvement. Kachalia says criminals are becoming tech-savvy and the government needs to be a step ahead if it wants to win the war on crime.
And I will be communicating with colleagues in the JCPS cluster and with the President behind the curve. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because I think we must face up to the situation we are now confronting.
He adds that the cooperation agreement to combat crime signed by SAPS and the provincial government last year needs to be revisited. Ndutuzelo Nene, Eyewitness News in Cape Town.
Staying with policing matters, Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya plans to take the matter of being placed on leave of absence on appeal. The Pretoria High Court this afternoon dismissed Sibiya's urgent application, which would have seen him return to work after being placed on leave of absence in July. Sibiya was requested to stay at home by National Commissioner Fani Masemola after being implicated by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi in allegations of corruption within the criminal justice system. Arun Singh has more.
In a lengthy ruling, Judge Norman Davis found that Shadrack Sibiya's legal team were attempting to disguise his stay-at-home order as a suspension. Sibiya, the Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, was requested to stay at home in July by his boss, National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola. Sibiya has consistently been arguing that Masemola's decision to have him stay at home was being disguised as a suspension. But the court found that there was no proof to support this argument. The order further notes that Sibiya's pay has not been affected, and following a risk assessment in July, where he was deemed high risk, he was provided with a protection team, members of whom he personally chose. Sibiya's urgent application was dismissed with costs, with the seasoned cop planning to take the matter on appeal. Arun Singh, Eyewitness News.
The South African Human Rights Commission has found that government failed to uphold the human rights of miners in Stilfontein who are allegedly in conflict with the law. Dozens of illegal miners died during an extended government-led operation aimed at shutting down illicit mining networks last year. The operation left hundreds of miners trapped underground, with some reporting they had run out of food and water. The Commission released a series of reports today detailing the most significant human rights violations recorded in the past financial year. Alpha Ramushana has more.
The South African Human Rights Commission's latest report concludes that although the miners in Stilfontein may have broken the law, depriving them of essential supplies was a clear violation of their rights. More than 1,000 Zamazamas resurfaced due to hunger and health concerns, while 78 people were reported to have died underground. The Commission's lead researcher, Martin Tsibirwa, highlighted the Stilfontein incident and the torture of patrons at Pretoria's Zanzu nightclub as a serious cause for concern.
For example, you remember the case of Stilfontein, the mining issues that happened there, which affected the right to life and access to food in that case. And then you also, I think, remember the case of the Zanzu bar and lounge in Pretoria.
The report will be handed to Cabinet to review and take action on the reported human rights violations. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News, Johannesburg.
Stats SA says it won't be drawn into forecasting if the South African economy can sustain the marginal growth seen in the past 3 quarters. The economic growth rate quickened in the second quarter of the year, reporting a 0.8% growth following the first quarter's 0.1%. This is the third consecutive increase and the highest rate since the second quarter of 2023. Mining and manufacturing boosted economic performance on the supply side, while household consumption spurred growth on the expenditure side. Despite beating expectations, the economy remains sluggish. Deputy Director General of Economic Statistics at Stats SA, Joe De Beer.
What this means for the future is not really in our ambit to say whether this is now sustainable or not. We all know the risks about economic forecasting, what's going to happen with the weather for agriculture, are the tariffs going to stay, what does that mean for our imports and exports, what's going to happen with the exchange rates. There are so many different variables. But as Stats SA, we tend to be rearward looking rather than going into the space of economic forecasting.
Gold's trading at $3,645.08 an ounce. The rand's at 17.52 to the dollar, at 23.70 to the pound, at 20.54 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $66.68 a barrel.
And in your sport, kickoff in Bafana Nigeria World Cup qualifier. David Miller out of the Proteas T20 series in England, and the latest from the SA20 auction.
A look at your weather. Clear skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 13 degrees and peak at highs of 27. Pretoria is at 15 and 28. Vereeniging's at 12, also reaching highs of 27 degrees. A cloudy day for the mother city with morning fog as well as light and variable winds at a low of 14 and a high of 21 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. Hostage negotiators and the Special Task Force Police are currently on the scene where a police officer is holding his family captive in a house in Mamelodi in the east of Pretoria.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. EWN Traffic.
Well, at the start this hour, if you're traveling through Germiston heading into Alberton, there's an accident scene on the N12 westbound. This is near Voortrekker Road. This is causing huge delays all the way from Bedford View, Van Buren off-ramp. Motorists are advised to avoid that route. I understand as well, it looks like the highway is closed off to traffic at this stage. There's also bumper-to-bumper traffic further up in the Bedford View area, N3 southbound. This is between Modderfontein Road and Van Buren. Also traveling coming from Edenville, heading towards Germiston, expect some delays. R24 westbound between Edenville Road and the Gilulis interchange. Bumper-to-bumper traffic heading into the Joburg CBD. This is the M2 westbound between Heidelberg Road and the Crown interchange. Also delays still. This is traveling through the Joburg CBD. Expect about a 30-minute delay. M1 southbound. This is between Killarney Bends and the Crown interchange. We still have that accident scene in the Centurion area on the N14 northbound near Jean Avenue, slowing down traffic, while in the mother city there's an accident scene N2 outbound. This is near Meway, slowing down traffic, and also coming into the city of Cape Town. Expect heavy delays on the elevated freeway. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, equipping you with efficient and secure cash management solutions for your business. Good evening, 10 minutes after 6. I'm Stephen Grootes. Welcome to The Money Show. Do you remember when Walmart first came to South Africa through Massmart? 2010, 2011, I was I was a political reporter at the Eyewitness News team. Yes, I remember those days like that too. And I just remember going to press conference after press conference. Ibrahim Patel was not amused. I think the government spokesperson, was it, what happened to him? Jimmy Money. Oh, yes, he changed slightly. He's now, where is he? With MK? Is he with MK? EFF can't always keep up. The point I'm making is that at the time, I think there was a lot of excitement about Walmart. I was excited about Walmart. American-style shopping, what more could you want? Now, they're coming. meh. So what? Would kind of be my response. I don't know if it's just me. I think there may be others, but I kind of, so what, seems to, I think, be the response. Certainly the response of the market, if you look at the share prices of the people that they'll actually be competing against. I was just interested in that. And I don't really know where they're going to compete either. I think it's going to be very, very tough. Well, maybe you have a different view. Maybe you've done some shopping at Walmart somewhere else in the world, and you can put me right on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Lots going on in the United States tonight. They've revised down the number of jobs created by 911,000. The sheer scale of it, even in American terms, is absolutely massive, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are sort of reverberations across stock markets around the world as a result. But the big story today, of course, is around the merger between Anglo and Teck, creating the world's fifth biggest mining company. We'll speak to David Mackay and David Hale in just a moment about that. Also, of course, our GDP figures. Our economy grew just 0.9% at that rate in the second quarter of the year. I noticed that gross capital formation was down, and that worries me about the future. We'll hear from Sifiso Mkhwanazi from Alex Forbes about that in about 10 minutes. Kwena Maloko, already sitting in the studio from Equity Research Sales at Absa CIB. She's your market commentator this evening. Patricia DeLille, someone not afraid to put on her boxing gloves. There was a tourism investment summit today. We'll hear from her around that. And then the Reserve Bank, they've seized around 95 million rand from a company. They essentially say it's been overstating the amount of gold it's been producing. It's been basically inserting extra gold. I mean, this takes you directly to the story of illegal mining, doesn't it? And then I'm looking forward to hearing from Shell, actually, speaking about their seismic surveys. That'll be after 7 o'clock this evening. You know the number? Good to hear from you. Voice notes too on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, a major move today from Anglo and Teck, the two mining companies, agreeing to a merger, they say, on equal terms. They'll be based in Canada. They'll be one of the biggest mining companies in the world. They'll be focusing on copper, iron ore and zinc, but really, if you look at the deposits they'll control, copper. We start with David Mackay, editor at Mining MX. David, good evening. An announcement, I suppose, that caught most of us by surprise, maybe not you. Does the rationale make sense to put these two companies together?
Caught me by surprise as well, Stephen. So no worries on that front. Yeah, I mean, absolutely it does. It is the companies, they say, have very similar cultures. Mine in the same way with the same values, but I think the major or one of the major points that comes out from this is at asset level there are contiguous assets in Chile that, when put together, make a very sizable operation with good synergies and with growth. And copper is the metal of the day. Everybody's after the growth, and I think that Anglo and Teck get that straight off. And also, I mean, I was thinking about this a little while earlier. It kind of makes you think differently about Anglo's own strategy of restructuring. You know, it's getting rid of so many of its traditional assets, diamonds and platinum's already gone, as well as metallurgical coal. This kind of addresses the next what stage of things. And also the issue of whether Anglo is vulnerable to M&A. It does become a smaller company when it restructures, and so there was a feeling that it could become someone's breakfast again. I think that issue is dealt with as well.
It's the same for Teck too. Wasn't there an offer for them by Glencore a couple of years ago? I mean, this is two, let me say, medium-sized players becoming a big player and looking after themselves together, choosing their own destiny, if you like.
I thought that. I mean, I sort of posed the question to Duncan Wamblatt, the CEO of Anglo, whether, you know, they'd both been picked on in the schoolyard separately and they decided to club together. I mean, I think there is an element of that, I believe. But I also think that it starts with asset level common sense and logic. Otherwise, you could never get this passed. You can't just club up together because, you know, you're worried about your job. So I think at the asset level on the copper side, it makes very obvious logic. And I think that's where that's where Duncan and his opposite number at Teck, Jonathan Price, would have started and did start. In fact, they were discussing cross-border cooperation on the Chile copper assets.
I noticed both boards very careful to say it's a merger on equal terms, but one's supplying the CEO and one's supplying the deputy CEO. Am I reading too much into it?
No, it's I suppose you're trying to, one's trying to figure out who approached who. And again, it was a question that I asked without getting a definitive answer. I don't know exactly how that would have panned out. I think, though, what's key to this is, Duncan Wanblad will be the CEO, but this thing will be headquartered in Canada. And with the Canada Express note in the announcement that there would still be a lot of inbound investment into Canada. That's to do two things, to win over the major shareholder in Teck, the Keevil family, who previously blocked the Glencore deal, and to win over or to gain a Canadian government approval. Perhaps the biggest potential stumbling block here is the Canadian government's attitude to this. It has in the past said only under very exceptional circumstances will it allow foreign purchase of Canadian assets. So I think it's a bit of a balancing act. But just looking at it face value, it looks as if it's been pretty perfectly done.
David Mackay, thanks so much. Editor at Mining MX, you with the Money Show, 17 after 6. David Hale is the co-portfolio manager for Global Natural Resources at 91. David, good evening. In a way, this is really all about copper. How important is copper going to be in the future? How's demand for it expected to change?
Look, I think copper is going to be the key metal in the future. It's a key metal today already. And I think what we're seeing with, trends around electrification and decarbonization, I think, more and more kind of recently the trends around data centers that's going to be erected for artificial intelligence, etc. That's going to probably just expedite demand growth in copper. We see a very strong demand growth profile in copper, and I think most of the major mining companies are also looking to effectively grow their copper portfolio. So from that perspective, I think the combination of Anglo American and Teck is it creates a compelling opportunity in terms of copper growth. Just the synergy of combining Collahuasi and QB2 operations are probably going to mean that they, can add 200,000 tons of additional copper per annum. If you look at what BHP is going to be paying in terms of greenfield capital expenditure for 200,000 tons of copper, it's going to be a lot more than this.
So we can look at, for example, another commodity everyone's been talking about, platinum, and we've seen how changes to the car industry have changed demand for platinum, and you start to see a huge debate about hybrid cars and electric cars. Is copper going to be vulnerable to any kind of technological change? I completely accept the case you make, and many others have made. You completely get it, that we're going to see a lot more demand for anything that can conduct electricity in a sort of AI era. Is there anything that could shake that for copper?
I think you do have competitive metals. I think something like aluminium, even silver has got the ability to basically conduct. But I think on the kind of the sort of efficiency of conducting electricity, it's difficult to basically beat copper. I think at a certain price point, aluminium makes its way into that mix. But it's also you basically need a lot more volume of aluminium to do the same work. So it effectively works well on large infrastructure and sort of grid build out, but basically going into smaller applications, etc., and especially also around the data sector rollout, the data center rollout even. I think copper is going to be very difficult to replace.
The other assets this company will have, crop nutrients and iron, I mean, are they important at all, or are they just a sideshow?
Yeah. I think iron ore, high-grade iron ore is going to be key in future steel making. I don't think that, steel is going to go away, but we could see a shrinkage in the steel demand globally, especially if China slows down and kind of build less, etc. But I do think that you will, still need high-grade iron ore. I think, if you look at the kind of decarbonisation pathway of the steel sector, high-grade is going to be the kind of go-to input for steel makers. If we have to basically move away from blast furnace, which is highly pollutive, to electric arc furnace over time, high-grade iron ore is going to be the way to do that. And then on the crop nutrient side, I think, personally, I'm a bit skeptical of Anglo's own project, but I do think that crop nutrients, in general, has got a good future. BHP is obviously investing in potash, as well in Canada at the moment, starting their Jansen mine quite soon. So I think there's a good kind of a growth profile for, crop nutrients in general. Potassium is quite a concentrated commodity in terms of geographic location. So potassium, which is going to be the kind of base of Anglo's plans in crop nutrients, is also, quite an attractive commodity.
David Hale, thanks very much, and indeed co-portfolio manager for Global Natural Resources at 91.
702. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
22 after 6 on The Money Show. Well, confirmation from Stats SA, our economy growing by 0.8% in the second quarter of the year. Mining up nearly 4%. Consumer activity also up. Sifiso Mkhwanazi is chief economist at Alex Forbes. Sifiso, good evening. So mining output up strongly. A big component of this figure was that. I presume also gold and platinum prices being so much higher. All of that kind of helps quite nicely.
Good evening to you, Stephen, and to the 702 listeners. Yes, that's correct. Mining was one of the sectors that was that partially recovered from, a decline in the previous quarter. But I must say that even that was a partial recovery from the mining sector. But looking at the production side of things, broadly, there was an improvement. It was only two sectors really that contracted from that sector, construction as well as your transport. But if you look at things as well from the spending side, you had, the consumer remaining quite resilient with household spending growing around 0.3% quarter on quarter. But I must say that we are concerned that the factors that have been driving or supporting household spending, we think that going into the second half of this year are going to start unwinding. For example, you had a very low inflation environment, but we are already seeing inflation picking up. And with interest rates as well, we are of the view that the SAP is done with the cutting cycle. So the support that the household had enjoyed from interest rates, from relatively lower interest rate, that's also fading away. And as you pointed out in your intro, capital formation or fixed investment, that's also another concern. It has been in a slump for 3 consecutive quarters now. And if you look at the latest RMB business confidence index, it actually shows that for the third quarter, business sentiment deteriorated. You have business people concerned, particularly about the 30% tariff that the U.S. has imposed on SA exports. You also have them just generally being dissatisfied with the global economic environment, which is becoming challenging. So as much as the growth print was quite strong compared to the first quarter, there remains headwinds going forward. And what this latest print really means is that South Africa is still a sub 1% economy, which is, of course, not good for job creation, among other things.
I mean, Sifiso, that issue around gross capital formation really worries me. And I mean, it worries all of us. I can tell it worries you. Because what it suggests is that people are short-termist. If you've got everybody talking about how tough life is, and yet consumer spending is still slightly up. I mean, people are not investing in the future. And businesses, we know, some are paying out dividends rather than invest in the future. That tells you everything you need to know about how people feel about the economy.
Yes, that is correct, Stephen. Sure, I must say that the issues that individuals are faced with and struggle with are not too different, from what businesses would also struggle with. Take one instance, the local government service delivery issue. That affects both parties, and it's one of those things that causes a lot of uncertainty even for businesses when thinking about the future. And now adding on to that, the tariffs, the external headwinds that we are faced with, and the noise really around tariffs has also overshadowed the good progress that has been made when it comes to structural reforms, which we think that are moving in the right direction, perhaps not as fast as we would like, but that's one area where that will be supportive of growth. And we are already seeing some improvements in the electricity sector and in the logistics. I think you may have seen the latest announcement. So we are moving in the right direction when it comes to the reform agenda, but there seems to have been external factors that are overshadowing some of the tailwinds that were emerging locally, and also the shift from the sub now to targeting a lower inflation target at 3%. That does suggest to us that they are likely to hold interest rates at next week's meeting, and for the rest of this year going into next year, which means that real interest rates will remain tight. Therefore, consumption also will be another component of GDP that will not do as well, joining business confidence.
Safis from Konasi, thanks so much. Chief Economist at Alex Forbes, 27 after 6.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Kwena Maloko is from Equity Research Sales at ABSA CIB. Kwena, good afternoon. Busy day for you. The merger, Anglo Tech, seems to be generally a positive reaction. I mean, maybe not at the headquarters of BHP.
Yeah, definitely, right? So what we did see is that the Anglo share price sort of ended the day 9% higher. Tech is trading 12% higher in New York. And I think the comments made earlier resonate, right? You've created this big copper play in the room. Copper is the metal of the future. And it also, again, puts investors' concerns about what next for Anglo American after their portfolio reconstruction and who buys them out eventually. So I think this one sort of reflected some of the positives that were mentioned earlier, but also Anglo has declared a $4.5 billion special dividend that's coming through. So it's about, let's call it at today's exchange rate, 75 Rand per Anglo share. And importantly, that's not conditional on them, having to sell De Beers and the coal business. So that's an actual real return that comes back to investors. So not surprised that the share ended up higher today.
I mean, everybody sort of walks away happy, basically. It's quite a rare merger where that happens.
It's very rare where everybody walks away with a high five.
Something will happen. Spar up very strongly. They were finally able to sell their unit in Switzerland. It's taken a while.
I think so, and I think that's the real kicker here, right? They had disclosed previously that they were going to sell this business. They'd impaired it, but the market had always had a question mark about whether they will be able to sell it and to whom. I think importantly as well is that the buyer has now taken on the debt, and the guarantees that the South African balance sheet had to stand up for now fall away. So what that means is that you free up some capital to concentrate on the markets that SPAR can win in, right? South Africa's also had its challenges, and it would be nice if they could deploy capital and get to those targets further out that they told us. I think additionally they talked about the earnouts. That's probably where there's a bit of question mark. So SPAR will participate in the profits of SPAR Switzerland, even though it's not under them anymore, should they reach certain profit hurdles. The problem here is the likelihood of reaching those targets, right? And that would be sort of the highest profits we've seen, even from the pandemic, where you sort of saw revenue tick up. So that's an optionality more than anything. Difficult to price in, but it is there as sort of a silver lining on the deal. So 6% probably is fair.
I made the point, I mean, maybe unfairly at the start of the show, that certainly my reaction to the announcement that Walmart was coming was meh.
Yeah.
None of the retailers' share prices seem to even notice.
Yeah, I think that it's fair. It's a fair comment, right? So if you look at Walmart's strength as well, there's the number 2 e-commerce player in the US. So let's say that's the angle that they're going to come with. You have to fend off Takealot, right? They're a very strong competitor in the non-grocery side. And where Walmart is also particularly good in the US is that by market share, they're the leading online grocery retailer. But then you have to fight off ShopRite and
you have to buy the motorbikes.
Exactly. Fair, high capex on those motorbikes.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that the South African operators are world class, right? And you have to compete with a sophisticated buyer as well. So it remains to be seen. There's not a lot of detail. They said they'd tell us more in terms of sites and pricing strategy all in October. But I think it's probably a fair reaction, right? We have some very strong competitors and they have to come with a differentiated offering.
I also haven't seen Amazon really do anything. I mean, maybe, but I haven't seen them do anything.
No, I mean, since the launch in May, was it May last year? And they're still building adoption, right? And I think that's the problem. We had expected some competitive pressure, but then it just shows you that you have to bring something differently. I think Amazon, we had expected, some of the products that aren't available locally, because that would be the differentiator. Otherwise, you're just chasing down Take-A-Lot's market share, and they're not ready to give it up.
No. GDP figures, I mean, they were up 0.08, up 0.8%. Nothing really to write home about. Concerns about the future, though.
I hear you, but I think we must take the silver linings, right? I mean, if you look at what the economist consensus was, let's call it post-GNU, everyone downgraded those numbers quite aggressively, and we were talking about 50 basis points of GDP for this year. So I think, yes, you're right in that the capital side is a concern for the medium term and being able to sustain higher GDP for longer. But I'm happy to take the wins, especially on the consumer side for our stocks.
Kwena, thanks so much. Kwena Maloko, Equity Research Sales at Absa CIB. Really appreciate you coming in. Just after 6:30, time for the latest Eyewitness News. Marky, good evening. Also looking at the GDP figures today.
That's right, Stephen. Thanks. Good evening. While mining, manufacturing and trade have been highlighted as sectors which gave the economy its biggest boost in the second quarter of the year, construction was among the underperformers during the period under review. During this period, the economy surpassed growth expectations, ticking up by 0.8%. This follows an increase of 0.1% in the previous year. Stats SA released the latest GDP print today amid concerns the country's economy continues to struggle to hit the right notes. Statistician General Risenga Maluleke.
Mining grew at 3.7%. Agriculture grew at 2.5%, having contributed 0.1 of a percentage point. And indeed, manufacturing growth 1.8%, contribution 0.2 percentage point. Trade 1.7%, having contributed 0.2 of a percentage point.
The Cooperative Governance Department is confident it will be able to turn the troubled Ditsobotla municipality around. The Northwest municipality has recently been placed under administration following issues of maladministration and poor service delivery. Today, COGTA Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa met with councillors from the municipality to communicate the recovery plan. Thabiso Goba has more.
For the second time since the 2021 local government elections, national government has been forced to intervene in the embattled Ditsobotla municipality. In 2022, the municipal council was dissolved and there was fresh by-elections at all its wards. The decision came after there were 2 mayors, 2 speakers and 2 municipal managers appointed at the municipality at the same time. COGTA Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa says his mandate is to make sure the municipality works.
I'm very confident. I'm of the view that the provincial government wants to see this municipality working. Even most of councillors, not all of them, are willing to see services going to the people.
Hlabisa has called on all councillors to put their personal and political rivalries aside and work together in fixing the municipality. Thabiso Goba, Eyewitness News.
Gauteng's Portfolio Committee on Community Safety wants better protection and equipment for the province's crime prevention wardens after 5 of them were shot during a routine patrol. On Sunday morning, 5 wardens sustained gunshot wounds after being attacked by a group of men in Davidton in the east of Johannesburg. While all the wardens survived, the incident has sparked questions over their training and the fact that they don't have licenses to handle firearms. Committee Chairperson Bandile Masuku says the incident has raised urgent questions about the level of training, equipment and support provided to wardens, especially when facing heavily armed criminals.
As Gauteng continues to grapple with violent crime, it is imperative that all law enforcement personnel are properly equipped and safeguarded. The committee extends its well wishes to the injured wardens and wishes them a full, speedily recovery. In further calls on law enforcement to ensure that those responsible for this crime are swiftly apprehended and brought to justice.
And First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, has flown to the United States to make a fresh appeal for better trade terms for Scotch whisky during his 2-day visit. US President Donald Trump has imposed a 10% tariff on whisky and a majority of other goods from the UK when they enter the American market. The Scotch Whisky Association has argued for an exemption or a relaxation of the rules for the lucrative export, a call supported by the Scottish and UK governments. Trump is due to visit the UK this month for a state visit following a 4-day trip to Scottish golf resorts in July. The First Minister said he raised the issue of whisky tariffs directly with Trump, whose mother was born on the Isle of Lewis, when they met. But on his trip back to the US, Trump seemed to play down the extent of their conversation. However, the BBC reports that Swinney believes the US administration is open to further discussion and he's seeking to press the case before Trump's second state visit to the UK from the 17th to the 19th of September. A look at your weather. A fine Wednesday in store for Gauteng tomorrow, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. Temperatures will drop to overnight lows between 12 and 15 degrees and peak at alternating highs of 27 and 28 degrees. A cloudy day for Cape Town with morning fog as well as light and variable winds at a low of 14 and a high of 21 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. While mining, manufacturing and trade have been highlighted as sectors which gave the economy its biggest boost in the second quarter of the year, construction was among the underperformers during the period under review.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage, if you're traveling towards Alberton, that's leaving the Germiston Bedfordview area. There's an accident scene on the N12 westbound near Voortrekker Road, causing about a 2-hour delay all the way from Linksfield Road. I understand that off-ramp, that Voortrekker off-ramp off the N12 West is closed off to traffic as a result. Also, bumper traffic that's heading into Bedfordview coming from Edenvale. R24 westbound between Edenvale Road and the Gilulis interchange. Driving through the Joburg CBD, we still have heavy delays on the M1 southbound between Killarney Benz and the Crown interchange. Also in Proteas Lane, expect some delays on the N12 westbound between the R554 Abu Bakr Drive and the R558 in the Mother City. We're still dealing with that accident scene N1. This is heading towards Okavango off-ramp. Also accident scene causing heavy delays. This is on the N2 outbound approaching Meway. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Escape the ordinary at De Hoek Country Hotel, Magaliesburg. A haven of tranquility and a 5-star masterpiece. Unparalleled luxury and the perfect getaway. Just an hour from Joburg and Pretoria. Bring your team for an executive corporate breakaway. Plan an unforgettable wedding surrounded by breathtaking beauty. Indulge in exquisite fine dining and rejuvenate mind and body at our spa. Visit dehoek.com to discover your exclusive escape. De Hoek Country Hotel. Celebrate life where luxury meets serenity.
Corporates That Care promotes and encourages corporate leaders and all citizens to walk the talk for a better South Africa. Catch Corporates That Care this Wednesday at 10 to 9 featuring Netcare. Their group CEO, Dr. Richard Friedland, will be in conversation with Bongani Bengwa. Join us every Wednesday as we highlight the efforts of companies and brands dedicated to building our country. Corporates That Care. There's a Prime Media Cares initiative with 702 and Prime Media Outdoor. 702, let's walk the talk and make a difference together.
What do partners of the Gates Foundation do when facing the world's toughest challenges? They keep going. From discovering a plastic drape that helps detect excessive postpartum bleeding faster, to developing better bed nets to kill malaria-carrying mosquitoes, to researching an RSV vaccine that could save hundreds of thousands of children. For every problem, there are people who prove that progress is possible. The Gates Foundation, partners of human potential. Learn more at gatesfoundation.org/keep going.
.702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on Stephen at 702.co.za.
21 minutes to 7. You may remember a conversation we had with the CEO of Sun International last night, and we were talking a little bit about online gambling, and I put it to him that there had been a huge rise in online gambling, and as a result, more people than ever before in South Africa were gambling, certainly more now than during the physical era. And there was a little bit of a debate. We went back and forth a little bit about that, and he said essentially that numbers hadn't really been kept. Well, it turns out, and I really didn't mean to sort of put it like this, but it turns out, in fact, that yesterday, as we were speaking, Stats SA were releasing some numbers, and they looked, and this is what's called activities in the personal services industry that recorded the highest growth rates in 2023 compared with 5 years before that. So 2018 to 2023, and right at the top is bookmaker and online gambling services. They're up 72%. Now, I would suggest that probably 2022, 2023, and certainly in the last year is when I've really noticed the huge explosion in gambling for online media. So I have no other way of assessing how much of it is going on. I'm sure it'll come out through company results and all the rest. But I would have to agree with the numbers from Stats SA. Booker and online gambling services in that 5-year period, 2018 to 23, up 72%. I'm sure it's up more since then. I'm sure you have a story about online gambling, for good or ill. 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567.
EWN Sport.
Anthony Tusheda, we're still ahead. Is that our corner?
Yeah, good evening, Stephen. No, it's actually Nigeria that have just received a corner. But like you mentioned, Bafana leading 1-0, and it was quite a dramatic goal at that. Nkotsa driving to the line, cutting back, and then it was William Troost-Ekong who turned it into his own net.
Here comes the corner.
5 minutes left to go in the half with Bafana leading 1-0. I'm sure we'll hear if they do equalise. With also us getting some sort of a hint that FIFA may potentially have resolved the qualifying points deduction. In March, Bafana fielded Tebogo Mokoena despite the player having a suspension to serve for cumulative yellows. FIFA shared on social media this afternoon that South Africa would qualify if they beat Nigeria and Benin failed to beat Lesotho. As it stands, Bafana are 5 points leading in their qualifying group. However, 3-point deduction would mean that they could only qualify during the next international break. At the same time, we have Egypt playing Burkina Faso, and a win there will send the Pharaohs through to the tournaments. In selected European qualifying this evening, Portugal head to Hungary, England are in Serbia. While in rugby, Dwayne Vermeulen shut down criticism of the Springboks. He argues the breakdown in the 24-17 loss to the All Blacks at the weekend wasn't a major concern.
It's two poachers and maybe just one counter-ruck. So I think if you look at a test match rugby, which goes 80 minutes, I don't really think it's a massive talking point. We try to put pressure on the opposition as well. So yes, they've done a couple of things, but it's not exposing us in a way.
Switching to cricket, where the Proteas will be without David Miller for the 3-match T20 series against England. He suffered a right hamstring strain and unfortunately was unable to recover in time. First T20 international is Wednesday evening. No replacement called up. Meanwhile, former South African all-rounder Albie Mokkel will be a bowling consultant for the series. And the SA20 player auction has been taking place with Pretoria Capital snatching up Deovod Brevis for a record 16.5 million rand, as well as signing up Keshav Maharaj. Durban Super Giants have also spent big on Proteas. T20 captain Aiden Markram makes the switch from the Eastern Cape, while Kwena Mapaka and Gerald Coetzee also signed up. We also have Vian Mulder and Nanda Berger being picked up by the Joburg Super Kings. Anthony Teixeira, Eyewitness News Sport.
Could I courier this toy carrot that my son glued his baby teeth onto?
For sure. We're your guy. How about a strip of slightly used duct tape? Yeah, we're your guy.
And this spoiler for my quantum.
Chief, we're your guy. With over 4,000 fast and flexible ways of couriering your parcel, locally and internationally, whatever you need couriered, we're your guy. The Courier Guy. Visit thecourierguy.co.za.
This year marks YouTube's 20th anniversary, and to celebrate the milestone, they're introducing the YouTube Works Awards to South Africa for the very first time. The global program, which has already highlighted creative excellence and effectiveness in more than 15 countries, now comes to our shores to showcase the most original and impactful campaigns running on the platform. On the 10th of September, YouTube will host a high-profile awards ceremony recognizing the brilliant creative talent behind these ideas and officially announcing the 2025 winners across a range of categories.
For those 2 a.m. checkouts or the late night shifts, for the last minute orders and the beginning of the month rush, for the 9 to 5 that becomes a 5 to 9. You don't clock out, and neither should your payments. Pay Fast by Network, always open for the dreamers, the doers, for you. From e-commerce to in-store payments and business funding, we have you covered. Sign up today at payfast.io.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, just gone 6:45 the time. We were expecting, I should say, to speak to Patricia de Lille, the Minister of Tourism. I did tell you earlier that we were expecting that conversation. I get a sense it may unfortunately not happen. She is in the middle of an event. I think she's just been called on to speak. I imagine if she's at the event, she'll sort of put that audience ahead of us. I can understand why. I'll probably do the same thing. Disappointing, though. We do have some questions to put to her. I'll update you. The situation might well change, and we'll keep an eye on that. Lots to ask in the tourism space at the moment. If you're in the tourism industry, there's a big conversation. I was going to have this with the Minister, Patricia de Lille. Yes, we want investment in tourism. Where do we want it would be the question. So there's a lot of investment in Cape Town. If you were to invest in Joburg right now, would you do that? Would you get much bang for your buck? I mean, I say that living in Joburg, and I would like to put money into Joburg. The evidence for the moment seems to be that people aren't doing that. So I don't know if you have a view on that. The other thing, of course, is where you would absolutely put investment. I'd suggest two things. There's just more and more money into getting people to what we have that other people don't. So I'm talking about the Kruger National Park, the Big Five, and all of that. And then the other thing, which I think does happen, but just not as much as I would like, as I think it could, is what I would call mountain biking safaris. You know, I think people will pay a lot of money to go riding with giraffe. I've done it a couple of times, accidentally. Can't be that hard to make money out of that. 13 minutes now to 7 o'clock.
7:02.
7:02.
Stephen is on the Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, Business Live reporting today, the Reserve Bank seizing around 95 million rand from the company Rappa Resources. They believe the company broke our foreign exchange regulations. The money was seized from Access Bank SA. Rappa Resources is accused of adding gold that had not been taxed into its products. Essentially, what they do is reclaim gold from other products. Kabelo Kumalo is the company's and markets editor at Business Day. Kabelo, good evening. I appreciate the time. Thank you. What exactly is Rappa Resources accused of doing?
Rappa Resources has been in a long drawn-out fight with the South African Revenue Services, where it gets part of, in quotation marks, the gold mafia alleged to be operating in the country, whereby they illegally mine gold or smelt down Kruger rents, which by law are zero rated for VAT, but then turn around and claim that VAT from the revenue services. So they are one of those companies that SARS has been battling with over the years.
If you consider how much illegal mining there is underway at the moment, the gold prices at an unbelievable record highs around the world, you would imagine the motive here is quite something, and a business model that reclaims gold from other products or from Kruger Rands would kind of be the thing that you'd need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the South talks about more than 20 billion that they believe has been siphoned from the fiscals due to these activities. It's one of those that Kids Vetter really has identified as a key areas to focus on. I mean, as you say, the gold price has over the past year or so been on a record-breaking spree, really. So those who smelt down Kruger rents into gold bars and on-sell them, they must be doing very well.
I presume the bank and other authorities, the Reserve Bank now, must have proof to get the money from the Bank of Rappa Resources. They wouldn't be doing this for no reason. They'd have to go through a process. They'd have to make a finding. They'd have to, I presume, to go into someone's bank account, a judge or someone would have to sign off on it. They'll need to have a lot of evidence, is my point.
Yeah, it's a drastic step to seize money from anybody's bank account and forfeit it to the state, really. So one will have to be confident that the Reserve Bank has the facts before them to justify that drastic decisions. And by the way, I mean, Rapa Resources has become unbankable really in the country after several banks cut ties with them over reputational risk concerns.
I mean, that story is fascinating because Capitec didn't want to bank with them. Others didn't want to bank with them. And if you can't bank, it's really impossible to continue to trade or to trade legally.
Yes, my information, in fact, that I got today is that they have now closed down shop this company called Rapa Resources. After Bidvest Bank severed ties with them and they tried to move then their facilities to Capitec. They did not even last 2 months banking with Capitec after they also flagged some concerns with their banking activities, and Bank Zero denied them a bank account to bank with them. So yeah, they have literally gone under due to their own conduct and bad reputation.
It's very interesting to see the pressure that's on banks to know their customer. I mean, the game really has changed in the last 10 years, and in a way, we have the Guptas to thank.
We do, and this has accelerated really since South Africa was grey listed, because there were a lot of loopholes that were found in South Africa, which allowed money laundering activities and financing of terror activities as well. So banks are now increasingly paying closer attention to knowing who their clients were, the sources of their incomes coming from, and how they move money in and out of their accounts.
I would imagine as well what people would be hoping for is some kind of deeper investigation into how the gold flows. Without that, you're never going to get to the bottom of the sort of illegal mining in gold that we know is underway.
Yes, indeed. SARS is doing its bit, but one will expect the broader law enforcement society to also do its bit to trace where this gold is coming from. I mean, there's a lot of rumors and speculation that most of the gold illegally mined finds itself back into the formal sector. So I think until we get to the bottom of that, we'll still see such activities thriving in South Africa.
Kabelo, I mean, in a situation like this, so Rapa Resources might close down. They won't be the only company doing something like this. So let me put it another way. They won't be the only group doing something like this.
No, they are not. I mean, SARS is in court with several of them. I mean, one of the landmark cases that SARS won was where they even prevented one of the people that they suspect of being involved in these activities from leaving South Africa without their permission, or the permission of the curator they appointed to run his firm. So SARS is really clamping down on this. There are several of these players in the sector which have been running thriving businesses for many years until now that SARS is now really closing in on their activities.
Kabelo Khumalo, thanks very much indeed. Companies and Markets Editor at Business Day, really shining the light there a little bit on what actually is going on. I'm glad to see that the Reserve Bank is doing something. We hear so many cases of illegal mining. The Stilfontein miners, many of whom lost their lives, were in the news today because of that Human Rights Commission report. The question is, as always, is to follow the money trail and where does it go? And it would seem that in this case, according to the Reserve Bank at least, they've been able to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another court case at some point. I suppose there are other issues, though, around how you continue to expand those. And there have been some big promises made by the current commissioner at SARS, Edward Kieswetter, about how they're going to make sure that they track down all of the money that is due to the state. But it is still an absolutely gargantuan, a massive, massive task. 6 minutes now to 7 o'clock.
7:02.
7:02.
Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
My sad duty to tell you, Nigeria have pulled one back, 1-1 going into half-time against Bafana in that World Cup qualifier. Some news today around home loan applications. This is from Better Bond, and they suggest that, in fact, home loan applications for the month of July were up 12% year on year. If you were to look at what's changed from this year to last year. I mean, the one big change obviously is interest rates, and we know that interest rates matter. There was some interesting information too about where people are buying, one or two specific places, and then who is buying in terms of ages. And there's been a bit of conversation around what you'd call millennials, people much younger than I, who don't seem to be as interested in home ownership. And the suggestion from the data, as I understand it, is that in fact a lot more people of that cohort, of that age, are beginning to look at buying houses, and freestanding houses. So not in a complex, not in a flat, but actually a freestanding house. It does suggest that there is a little bit of movement somewhere in our actual home sector. I realize something that you might do around the braai from time to time is discuss the value of homes. It's really a store of your own wealth. There's a perennial debate that Warren Ingram and I have around whether or not you should rent or you should own your own home. The point is that if you find that there is a big increase, I mean 12% year on year is a big increase in home loan applications, what that tells you is that there is a group of people with some confidence for the future. They're buying for various reasons, maybe to start a family, to have children, to find a bigger place to live, to actually be in an area in which they're going to feel comfortable putting some money and some capital and their family for quite some time. All of that surely is very positive.
Feeling some lag in Sector 3?
Copy. Optimizing working capital. Ready. You're approaching a tight corner. Cash flow pressure ahead.
Low on liquidity. Supply pressure is building. Set.
Deploying cash injection in 3, 2, 1. Flow.
Nice move. Better supply chain control.
Lab time advantage. Faster cash cycles, leaner inventory, and optimized working capital.
Ready, set, cash flow. Corporate banking from RMB. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and credit provider.
In a world where a lot can change in 6 years, you can rest assured knowing that Hino's 6-year drivetrain warranty won't. All Hino trucks now come standard with a 6-year drivetrain warranty protecting your investment all the way from pistons to gears. Built to keep your business moving, supporting uptime, growth and daily operations, because although a lot can change in 6 years, their warranty promise won't. T's and C's apply. Hino, all the way.
Running a business is tough. You need tools that just work. That's why more South African businesses are switching to Mac. At iStore, we make it easy with 4,000 rands in added value when you switch. That's 3 years extended warranty and remote tech support, leaving you to focus on everything else. Switch to Mac with iStore, your expert partner. T's and C's apply. Mac at iStore. Run smooth as business should.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, equipping you with efficient and secure cash management solutions for your business.
Stephen Grootes.
Taking your calls
on 011-883-0702.
3 minutes now to 7 the time. Well, you'll have noticed a comment by Hendrik de Tooy, the CEO of 91, talking about how crime and violent crime is having an impact on the economy. And I think in a way we've seen various parts of our society reacting to the murder of Boa van Niekerk. He was, of course, was the person involved in liquidating or investigating certain companies, an insolvency lawyer. And part of what Hendrik de Tooy said today was in fact echoed by the Deputy Minister of Finance, David Masondo. He was speaking at the MoneyWeb Economy and Investing Summit. He basically made the same point, that actually you can't have a situation where people like this are able, where killings are used to essentially stop investigations. You can't have financial crimes being exposed and the people who do the exposing actually now being killed. All of this is very good and positive. I always like it when business leaders actually stand up and say what they think. I think in some ways they may have a duty or an obligation to, as much as some government, and sometimes I myself don't like it. But I do wish that there would actually be some kind of action. And this takes us once again to the problems we've had with the weaknesses in policing, with the weaknesses in investigation, and then the difficulties in actually holding people legally accountable. Let me put it like this. It's tempting to say there must be convictions, but getting people into the witness stand and actually answering the questions. And we've seen a lot of focus on some of the sort of hits. I mean, there's no other word to describe it. And time again, there might be arrests, there'll certainly be investigations, but that's all there is. We never actually get to the point at which the pitman and Kabi, whatever, is asked, who paid you, how did this happen, and that the person after that in the chain is then connected. And without that, we're going to have this kind of murder happening again and again. We're going to have taxi violence happening again and again. We're going to have all of this happening again and again, and nothing will change. And what Hendrik de Tooy says about the economy, it will suffer as a result. Yeah, that's exactly what is going to happen. We'll hear from Shell. Alwani Musase will be talking to us. He's the country chair for Shell Downstream in South Africa. Rotendo Windengwi will be in to talk about what's happening on our continent. And don't forget as well, we'll be speaking to Warren Ingram with Personal Finance. Good evening with you. The Money Show, it's 7 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. We begin with developments coming from the east of Pretoria, where a hostage situation has been playing out at a house in Mamelodi since 8 a.m. this morning. A large police contingent is on the scene, including hostage negotiators and the Special Task Force team. An officer is still holding his family captive at this hour as a result of what's believed to be a family dispute. Khomotso Modise is live at the scene and joins us now. Khomotso, what exactly has been unfolding there?
Well, Maki, I can tell you that it's packed right here in Mamelodi East. I'm talking ambulances blocking the road as well as police vehicles. There is a heavy police presence here outside the home where it's understood a constable has held his family hostage. Here with me to shed some light on what's been happening this afternoon is Major General Samuel Tine. Major General, just clarify, what do we know currently about the situation inside the house?
Good evening to the listeners. Major General Tine, the District Commissioner of Tshwane. As we are here in the Mamelodi East area, where we received the call, the first responders that received the call, it was at around 8:10 in the morning, where it was reported that the off-duty police constable that is stationed in Boschkop, but he was deployed at the Essential Infrastructure Task Team, has held the family hostage. The first responders attended to the crime scene. As they approached the crime scene, there was a young boy who managed to come out of the house. As he came out of the house, so that is where he related the information to the first responders about the situation.
Major General, do we know if anyone has been injured inside the house?
Currently, we are not too sure if there's anyone that has been injured. And the first responders and the 14-year-old boy, of which is the niece to the police constable, indicated that there were shots that were fired. About 2 shots were fired, but we don't know if there's anybody injured so far.
Maki, the situation will continue to unfold right here in Mamelodi, and we are expecting to get more briefings from the police who are here. Khomotso Modise, Eyewitness News reporting live from Pretoria.
We'll have more on that developing story in our upcoming bulletins. Construction giant Murray & Roberts Holdings has been placed under provisional liquidation following an order of the High Court. The order comes after one of its creditors applied for either the final or provisional winding up of the company last month. The matter is expected to return to court again next month, where the creditor will seek a final winding up order. A provisional liquidator is expected to be appointed by the Master of the High Court in due course. The process comes amid a parallel process which saw Murray & Roberts Limited, a downstream subsidiary of the holding company, undergo voluntary business rescue. Jointly appointed business rescue practitioner from Metis Strategic Advisors, Josh Cuncliffe, says the order placing Murray & Roberts Holdings under provisional liquidation has no bearing on the business rescue process for or its subsidiary.
It's important that we stress that Murray & Roberts Holdings Limited and Murray & Roberts Limited are separate legal entities, and the liquidation of holdings has no impact on the ongoing business rescue proceedings of Murray & Roberts Limited. Our business rescue process, which began in November 2024, remains on track, along with the differential transaction, which provides for the acquisition of Murray & Roberts' mining-related subsidiary businesses.
Cunliffe says he's confident the adopted business rescue plan represents the most sustainable and viable path forward.
The differential transaction is not only expected to safeguard around 2,800 jobs, the majority of which are jobs here in South Africa, but also to preserve scarce technical skills across the mining and engineering sectors, which are particularly important in a South African context.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has defended the retaining of deputy ministers as part of the executive despite calls for their abolishment. Ramaphosa says deputy ministers serve an important role in assisting ministers to perform their duties. Ramaphosa was answering questions in the National Assembly this afternoon on several issues for the first time in the new term. Babalo Ndenza has more.
The role and financial costs of deputy ministers has been a point of discussion for years, with calls for their abolishment by parties. There is also a constitutional amendment bill by Action SA to abolish deputy ministers currently before Parliament. But President Cyril Ramaphosa says deputy ministers who don't hold executive authority and aren't legally empowered to act on behalf of ministers still have a lot to offer.
Deputy ministers continue to play a critical role in our governance. They are members of the executive. They participate in cabinet committee discussions. I'd like to believe that we have a really wonderful system that functions so well.
Ramaphosa says he would have preferred a smaller executive, but putting together a government of national unity meant he had to cater for more parties. Babalo Ndenza, Eyewitness News.
Mining and manufacturing have kept the lights on for the South African economy as the GDP records a 0.8% increase in the second quarter. This is the third consecutive quarter of growth, following the first quarter's minimal 0.1%. The latest GDP figure is also the highest since the second quarter of 2023. Nogukanya Mtambo has the full details.
Although the latest economic growth has surpassed expectations by some economists, it's still a fraction of the pre-COVID peak. On the supply side, the rebound in mining and manufacturing was helped by more stable electricity supply, logistical improvements, steady global demand and improved domestic conditions. Agriculture, which saved the economy from flatlining or contracting in the previous quarter, reported a modest contribution to the overall growth, albeit lower than its strong start in Q1. Statistician General Rasinga Maluleke.
In terms of agriculture, we saw a growth of 2.5%, but it was largely due to increased economic activity in horticulture and animal products.
Stats SA says the expenditure side was also positive, lifted mainly by stronger household consumption and softer imports. Nogukanya Mtambo, Eyewitness News.
And Joburg Mayor Dada Morero says it's all systems go for the upcoming U20 summit, where city leaders will gather under the G20 banner to reach consensus on common challenges. Morero was speaking at a media briefing in Sandton today ahead of the U20 Mayors Summit. Joburg and Tshwane will co-host mayors from the G20 member states at the end of the week as part of South Africa's presidency. They're expected to talk shop on a range of issues, including infrastructure, digital transformation and innovation, climate action and social inclusion. Despite criticism about the city's readiness to host the headline G20 events, Morero says Joburg's important role in global conversations cannot be understated.
When mayors and city leaders from across the G20 arrive here, we are not only exchanging ideas, we are creating networks of action. Johannesburg becomes the testing ground, the platform where global commitments can be piloted, adapted and implemented in real urban settings.
He says urban challenges cannot be addressed in isolation, labeling the upcoming gathering as critical.
They demand collaboration across borders, access to shared knowledge and the courage to scale solutions.
Gold's trading at $3,644.76 an ounce. The rand's at 17.54 to the dollar, at 23.73 to the pound, at 20.55 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $66.54 a barrel.
In Alberton, there's that crime scene. This is on the N12 westbound near Voortrekker Road, still causing about a 30-minute delay. That's coming from Bedfordview all the way from the Kilulis interchange while in the mother city. Also, accident scene N1 approaching Okavango off-ramp, and there's also an accident scene on the N2 outbound heading towards Muway, causing heavy delays.
A look at your weather. Clear skies in store for Gauteng. Tomorrow, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 13 degrees and peak at highs of 27. Pretoria is at 15 and 28. Vereniging's at 12, also reaching highs of 27 degrees. A cloudy day for the mother city with morning fog as well as light and variable winds at a low of 14 and a high of 21 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. A hostage situation has been playing out at a house in Mamelodi since 8 o'clock this morning.
EWN in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, equipping you with efficient and secure cash management solutions for your business. Good evening. At 9 minutes after 7, I'm Stephen Grootes. Much more important than my name is the fact that it's still 1-1. South Africa, Nigeria, Bafana, Nigeria at the moment for that World Cup qualifier. It's not the last way, but it is a vital game on the journey, of course, to the World Cup. Be good to be playing in that again. So I'll keep you up to date with the score because it is a very, very important game. We'll talk green economy in a moment. In fact, with Shell, Alawani Musesi, the country chair for Shell Downstream South Africa, agreed to talk to you tonight about the issues around seismic surveys. We'll also, of course, hear from Rotendo Hundingwi, and then this evening we'll speak to Warren Ingram about wills. And I don't know about you, but I get a sense so many soap operas happen simply because people don't prepare a will. It's not hard to do. It's very easy, in fact, and you save your family so much heartbreak if you do it. I mean, it's not something you want to think about. It might be worth having a conversation with some people in your family to see if they've done it. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 if you want to talk Walmart, if you want to talk something else, if you just want to talk about what was, clearly a handball. Also 072 702 1702.
702. Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
The Green Economy on The Money Show is brought to you by the Rose Foundation, giving used oil a renewed purpose and supporting a clean environment one drop at a time. Well, one of the big arguments you'll have seen play out in our politics and economy is around the seismic surveys that Shell has been conducting, looking for oil, usually off our coast. And you can see the arguments here. Oil companies say if there's a big find, there'll be a lot of money coming into the country. It'll help our economy. Environmental groups say oil companies should move away from fossil fuels, that drilling pollutes those areas permanently, and that just the way in which the searching is done through sound waves affects sea life. Alawani Musesi is the country chair for Shell Downstream South Africa. Alawani, good evening. I do appreciate the time. Thank you. What exactly are you looking for with your seismic surveys, and how are you looking for it?
Well, good evening, Stephen, and to your listeners. And thank you for having me. Seismic survey, maybe just to put it in context, is something that it's a way of trying to map out the subsurface under the sea to understand if there could be oil or gas that could be viable or explored. And using seismic survey is something that has been done all over the world and has been done a number of times off the coast of South Africa over years. And it helps you to figure out whether there are resources that could be explored in a viable manner.
If I were swimming underneath, I don't know, I suddenly had an aqualung or something and was, say 20 meters underwater, what would I hear?
Well, Stephen, I think maybe let's get to, how you normally would go about to have a seismic survey. You will have to apply for what we call an environmental authorization, which will then talk to, what are some of the risk mitigating factors that you need to put in place. And so first and foremost, you will not be looking to do any seismic survey in an area where you have people like you swimming. It will not be the right thing to do. You normally do that off the coast, around about 50 kilometers away from the coast. And starting with any of the acoustic sound that you need to do, you always have to observe for 24 hours to see if there's any marine life in the area. And if there is marine life, then you don't even do that. And once the survey begins, you are also then looking to see if there's any animals around the area, anything close to 800 meters in the area, then you always have to stop. And hence, when you do these surveys, you always have to have the experts who are looking out for marine life in the area. And we also make sure that in the environmental authorizations, you're doing it during the off-season in terms of the migration of whales and other marine life that you have. So it's really about making sure that you put all the mitigating
Sure.
mitigations in
Okay.
place to minimize any damage.
But I mean, you can't be sure that there's no life in the area, surely. I mean, you're talking about a massive volume of water.
You have in observations that you start with prior to actually starting the actual survey. There's instruments that you use to actually listen out for marine life and under the water. And you're right. I mean, it's vast areas, but you have to then listen for the marine life underwater. And the experts will tell you that there is a way that you can be able to listen if there is a marine life in the area that you're about to operate in.
Okay, I mean, I realize some animals make quite a lot of noise underwater. I don't know if they all do, though.
Well, I mean, I think that's where then, we bring in the experts, Stephen, when you do these kind of surveys to make sure that the experts can then be able to advise. I'm not an expert in this area myself, right? And so we rely on the know-how of the experts, and we rely on, our wealth of experience in doing these kind of studies all over the world and taking the best practice and then bringing it to bear when we then do these surveys in a country like South Africa. And like I said, I mean, this has been done in South Africa before a number of times. And I think if I look back sometime, there were situations where it was said, you're going to see dolphins dying off the coast. But I haven't seen that either. And I'm sure you have not seen that either. But the debate rages on. And it's an important debate for us to have. And it's an important debate because it says where there is a risk, we need to put mitigating steps in place in order to minimize any damage that could accrue.
Okay, so if you find something, and I know the economists will be hoping that you do, and then obviously you've got to drill for it, and I don't know if people still use oil rigs, I imagine you do. What would the reward be? Why is it worth whatever damage may happen? I realize there'll be regulations around that too, Alawani, and I know you'll comply with them. But what's the sort of reward? I'm giving you a once-in-a-lifetime chance to make the case.
The big reward is this, Stephen. I mean, as you and I sit right now and we're having this conversation, right? Almost 99% of new cars being sold in South Africa are still on combustion engines, as it were. So we're all going to continue to rely on oil to be able to energize ourselves and to go to different places. But the big upside could be that if we were to find gas, that could essentially change our energy mix in the country. And as you already know, I mean, gas has way less emissions compared to coal. And it could really absolutely pivot the country into using more gas for the future. And then the oil on the other side. The upside of that for the economy could be massive in that we will be talking about the start of a new sector. And I think it's part of the reason why this upstream exploration is really not understood. So for instance, if I take mining in this country, there's very good understanding of how mining operations work in this country and what mitigations you put in place. Whereas when you start talking about upstream exploration, it's not well understood because it's a new sector that could actually begin. And with that new sector, it could mean more jobs, more revenue, more tax revenue, and really change the shape of the South African economy, even bringing revenue from exporting some of the excess gas or oil that we could find off our shores. And thanks for that question.
No, well,
it brings back the question of why are we doing all this?
No, sure. I mean, I get it. As you say, the debate continues, Alawani. Your sort of future developments in South Africa. I mean, Shell is, you've been for most of your history, a fossil fuel company. Is that how you expect to stay? I realize the argument around gas, and you say it could go into the energy mix. Well, maybe in terms of electricity, certainly for some other practical things, but we can have that debate in a moment. What I'm trying to get to is, are you looking for any kind of energy or any development that is not related to fossil fuels at some time in the future?
So for us, we see ourselves playing our vision and the role that we continue to play as Shell. We see ourselves as playing a huge role in the energy transition. And like I said, an energy for us, gases for us is very important. So gas and LNG is what we see as the big contribution we're going to make between now and 2050 in contributing to the energy transition, because you do need that gas to be able to transition. You also then
I don't
need to
know
still
if
be
that's true.
producing.
I'm not. I don't want to have a big argument about it. I don't know if that's entirely true. Let me just say that, and we can go on. What I'm trying to get to, Alawani, is Shell only going to be a fossil fuel company, or is there anything that you're looking at that will give us energy that's not a fossil fuel?
Our key focus will continue to be, and our vision at the moment is LNG, it's gas, and sustaining the required oil or liquids that the economies require to be energized.
So you're not looking at anything else? I accept what you say about 90% of our cars, for example, but the world is changing quite quickly.
And absolutely, the world is changing quite quickly, and I do agree with you. But I think as a corporate, you want to play where your strength lies. And we are transitioning, society is transitioning, and we're going to play that role in the balanced transition for the society. And this is where we believe we are best placed to can be able to play that role in the transition. In 10 years' time, it could be that we are looking at something else that is very different, where we believe we have the technical know-how to be able to deliver on that. But I think it would be a little bit irresponsible to then say, we're going to pivot to something that we don't understand and we don't know how to really operate moving into the future. That does not stop us today in terms of some of the R&D stuff that we are doing. But we haven't found anything yet that we can say, here's the thing that we're really going to pivot to as a company.
Alawani, thank you. And I also want to say I've spoken to many environmentalists over the years on issues like this. Very seldom do any of the companies in your space actually come on. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you. Alawani Musesi is the country chair for Shell Downstream South Africa. Every drop of used oil matters. That's why the Rose Foundation is committed to the responsible collection and recycling of used oil, keeping harmful waste out of our ecosystems and away from our communities. By supporting their efforts, you're helping protect South Africa's natural resources for future generations. Be part of the solution and help build a cleaner, greener South Africa. Visit rosefoundation.org.za. Greener tomorrow with yesterday's oil.
The Money Show, Africa Business Focus.
Well, Dr. Rotendo Ndingwi is the founding director at Tribe Africa Advisory and author of the book Rumble in the Jungle Reloaded. Rotendo, good evening. Malawi and solar power, they've got a whole village that's now powered by solar.
Hey, Stephen. Good evening to you and good evening to your listeners. Definitely, and why Malawi's, in terms of this initiative, is so important, Stephen, is because Malawi as a country, obviously it's very small, Stephen. It's got a GDP of $500 per capita, a small population, 22 million. But this initiative that has been empowered or that's been led by SolarAid, which is a multinational NGO, has empowered 9,000 homes in the rural areas. And that's going to positively impact 32,000 people. And one of the big challenges with regards to solar power or just electricity in Africa, about half the population of Africa doesn't have access to electricity, and more importantly, they don't have access to renewable energy, which is solar power in this case. So such an initiative is not only impacting the adults, but people in schools. I think there are about 10 schools that have been impacted in a positive sense, 2 secondary schools, and a hospital. Some women were giving birth in dark rooms because there's no electricity. So the reason why there's a lot of hype around the solution, even because of the scalability, energy as a service is the framework and the concept that they're using. So it's not only just NGOs working and just giving for free, but they're making it sustainable because to be self-funding as energy as a service. And they're looking at rolling out this beyond the borders of Malawi. So it's a great story, Stephen, and the impact it's making.
Yeah, very interesting to see how the world is changing. Artificial intelligence and young people in Africa, they're looking at using that to drive changes around agriculture.
Yeah, so just to give context around this again, with regards to this whole storyline, I mean, we've got a big youth unemployment problem. I mean, the top 5 economies in Africa, which contribute 50% of the GDP, that's Ethiopia, South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, and Nigeria. The unemployment rate for youth is probably over 30%. Over and above that, we've also got a big population of youth on the continent. By 2050, 40% of the world's youth will be in Africa. But over and above that, the positive thing is that 60% of the world's arable agricultural land is in Africa. So there's a big conference that's happening in Senegal in this coming week, Stephen, where they're looking at how they bring AI, empowering young people with women and leveraging of technology in the agri space. And that's the big thing in terms of saying we've got a big asset in terms of land. How do we equip our young people through AI and technology in doing this? So some initiatives that have happened in countries like Ghana, for example, they've used digital vouchers for fertilizer distribution, and they've made it more efficient. They've used young people and involved them in that, and the distribution of fertilizers and making an impact there has made a huge thing. 87,000 women in Nigeria, for example, have received digital agronomic equipping and knowledge how through technology, and young people are involved as well. And in Mali, something similar is happening. So this conference is saying, look, let's use Africa's capability from an agricultural perspective, a land perspective. Let's bring technology. Let's equip young people in the same way, and we kill two birds with one stone. So it's a great initiative. It's a humongous task, even, but it's a step in the right direction in terms of us solving our own problems and looking and leveraging off a big problem of unemployment and young people on the continent. So it's an exciting story, especially with where Africa is at the moment, Stephen.
We've been watching very closely how the US President Donald Trump has been sort of putting pressure on the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the fact India's been buying oil from Russia. Nigeria could benefit.
Yeah, so Stephen, it's like squeezing a balloon. It's I think with the global geopolitics and geoeconomics, it's like squeezing a balloon. So, like you've mentioned, America has put pressure on India in terms of saying stop buying crude oil from Russia, because obviously the war that's going on in Ukraine, which is probably the right thing to do. But India, which consumes about, Stephen, I think right now 25% of the year-on-year growth in terms of consumption of crude oil in the world is with India. They've actually surpassed China. From a consumption perspective, they're still lower. I think they consume about 5 million barrels per day as compared to China, which consumes 16 million barrels per day. But the problem is India still needs oil. So they're saying, okay, if I can't get it from Russia, where will I get it from? And the next two countries they've looked at is specifically Nigeria, and they've looked at Angola as well. So from a Nigerian perspective, it's great because here's an opportunity to actually scale up with regards to selling to a new market, because their traditional markets of export, Stephen, was the West, which was America, and now India is opening up, and there's a big demand there. I think the challenge, though, for Nigeria at this point in time, Stephen, is that they've recently built that Dangote refinery, so they are not meeting their own needs. Nigeria still imports crude oil from the US to complement the stock that they need to manufacture for the local market. So how they're going to meet the demand and supply is going to be interesting. But I think the positive thing from an Africa perspective is that with all the dilemma that's happening globally with geoeconomics, there's an opportunity for them to scale up and take things to the next level. So on one side, one means meat is another man's poison, but there's an opportunity here for Africa to position itself, but it's like a balloon in terms of the global geoeconomics. Somebody's getting squeezed somewhere, somebody else is benefiting from somewhere. So let's see how this unravels itself.
And then Rwanda is actually using, really, you're not making this up, a sort of air taxi. It's a kind of drone.
It's drone technology at its best. Rwanda always comes up with these great ideas. So the most recent aviation show, they've launched a Rwanda air taxi, and basically it's a taxi it's a helicopter that vertically goes up and down and moves around the city. They've just literally launched it. So it's a self-flying electric air taxi. They launched it at the 2025 Aviation Africa Summit. Rwanda wants to build 30 vertiports, which are ports for these taxis. They've partnered up with drone technology. Government is putting legislature and policy in place to support this. If you remember, most recently, they also built the cable cars to transport and move people around. And they've also done partnerships with Zipline with regards to blood transfusion. So a lot of investment is gone here. The funny thing is when you look at the tech investment quantum that's going into Rwanda in terms of supporting technology startups. It's small because Rwanda is the country is small. But when it comes to ideas and breaking and pushing boundaries in terms of technology, they're really up there. So it's an interesting story, and it'll be interesting to see where this will take us to, no pun intended, with regards to that statement, Stephen.
Dr. Rutendo Windingwi, thanks very much indeed. Founding Director at Tribe Africa Advisory and author of the book Rumble in the Jungle Reloaded.
The Aubrey Masango Show on 702. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
Let's walk the talk.
Still 1-1, Bafana in Nigeria. Orbs, good evening. What do you got your highlights tonight?
Absolutely, Steve Ovo. We start at just after 8 o'clock, and the first hour is going to be on legal matters. I'm going to be speaking to Lutfia Kala, who is a labor lawyer. We're talking about the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace. It's an age-old conversation, but it still remains relevant. Yamkela Tikwadi joins me after 9 o'clock in our entrepreneurship feature. She is co-author of the book Rising Out of the Townships. We're going to be talking about the township economy. And then Judy Robinson, director at Forbes Mazars Institute of Development, is joining us to talk about why it is that our graduates are not finding jobs. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the final hour, we are opening up the lines.
Aubrey, thanks very much indeed. Youth unemployment is such a big issue at the moment. Good evening. It's you at the Money Show. It's 7 o'clock. Marky, good evening. The latest on this hostage drama.
That's right, Stephen. We're leading with developments from the east of Pretoria, where at Tshwane Home, where a hostage situation is playing out, has been inundated by police and emergency service personnel this evening in a bid to rescue an elderly woman and a young man. Good evening. A 32-year-old constable in Mamelodi has held his mother and nephew captive for almost 12 hours over a family dispute. At least 2 shots were fired earlier this afternoon, but it's unclear if there are any injuries. According to police, a 14-year-old boy managed to escape earlier, leaving the officer's mother and an 18-year-old boy in the house. Major General Samuel Tine says officers remain on guard for any movements.
Currently, we are not too sure if there's anyone that has been injured. The first responders and the 14-year-old boy, of which is the niece to the police constable, indicated that there were shots that were fired. About 2 shots were fired, but we don't know if there's anybody injured so far.
We move to KwaZulu-Natal, where a widow whose husband was shot and killed during a house robbery last month is calling for justice for her slain partner. Nkululeko Shezi was shot and killed at his home in KwaMatuta, south of Durban, when suspected gunmen forcefully entered his home and stole most of his belongings. His wife and children are now living in fear, believing the gunmen could still return. Nhlanhla Mabaso has more.
It was just one shot at the back. So the bullet penetrated through. And then after shooting him, he locked us inside the bedroom.
The traumatic scene is still very fresh in the mind for Nogwanda Shezi as she retells the violent incident that claimed her husband's life. She says a group of armed men terrorized them in front of their children. She's added that the incident was not the first where their home was robbed, and the family is concerned about no developments in the case. And while police have been praised for their swift action in dealing with crime in KZN, Nogwanda Shezi says she cannot relate.
My main call is that may we please be served justice. Let the civilians know that they are protected. If we are having SAPS around us, we must know that we are protected.
Police in the area are yet to respond. Nhlanhla Mabaso, Eyewitness News, KwaMakuta, south of Durban.
The ANC is concerned it's losing the black middle-class vote and has admitted it needs to find creative ways to regain the bloc. The party says the country's middle earners have become disillusioned with the ANC, which they blame for the country's corruption, poor governance and slow pace of transformation. This is contained in the ANC's discussion documents for its upcoming National General Council. The council is a mid-term review forum where the party takes stock of its policies and challenges since its last national conference. Tabiso Goba has more.
Research studies have shown the black middle class has outstripped the white middle class in terms of numbers since 1994. In its discussion papers, the ANC says the rise of the black middle class is largely due to government's economic transformation and empowerment policies. The ANC says in the early democratic years, the black middle class favored it. However, the group is now shifting towards other political homes. For this, the party blames a period of anti-intellectualism which took roots in its leadership structures. The ANC says traditional branches may not appeal to the black middle class. Instead, it has to create professional forums where this group can discuss policies and feel their voices heard. Thabiso Koba, Eyewitness News.
And Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has resigned amid Nepal's worst unrest in decades. This as public anger mounts over the deaths of 19 anti-corruption protesters in clashes with police yesterday. Today, crowds set fire to Parliament at the capital, Kathmandu, sending thick black smoke billowing into the sky. Government buildings and the houses of political leaders were attacked around the country. 3 more deaths were reported today, and amid the chaos, jail officials said 900 inmates managed to escape from 2 prisons in Nepal's western districts. The demonstrations were triggered by a ban on social media platforms, and while it was lifted yesterday, by then protests had swelled into a mass movement. A look at your weather. A fine Wednesday in store for Gauteng, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. Temperatures will drop to overnight lows between 12 and 15 degrees and peak at alternating highs of 27 and 28 degrees. A cloudy day for the mother city with morning fog as well as light and variable winds at a low of 14 and a high of 21 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. At Tshwane home, where a hostage situation is playing out, has been inundated by police and emergency service personnel this evening in a bid to rescue an elderly woman and a young man.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
One festival, endless flavor, and 2 unforgettable days of timeless music. The DSTV Delicious International Food and Music Festival, powered by Lotto Star, returns on 20 and 21 September at Kyalami Grand Prix Circuit. On Saturday, the stage erupts with Don Toliver, Questa, and Nkabi Zezwe. Then on Sunday, experience the legendary Lauryn Hill, Wyclef Jean, Lyra, and more. The DSTV Delicious Festival, powered by Lotto Star. Tickets at Ticketmaster.
Spring is sprung. The grass is res. It's now time to get stuck into your garden. So get to Chamberlain Gardening Centres for our spring promotion from 4 August to 12 October. Get ceiling trays at R29.90 or Calterra compost at R24.90. And don't miss a chance to win your share of R90,000 in gift vouchers every Saturday during the promotion. Chamberlain, famous for hardware and gardening since 1903.
Trade and payments. Scale with speed and confidence. Faster settlements with bulk payments.
Ready, set, cash flow. Corporate banking from RMB. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and credit provider.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Warren Ingram, of course, is a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital. Warren, good evening. So next week is National Wills Week, and I don't know why it is, but I'm always kind of aware of when National Wills Week is. The Law Society of South Africa does it, and you can actually get one free. And I think sometimes we forget, firstly, how simple, and secondly, how utterly vital a will can be.
You're right, Stephen. It's one of those things where when I do a talk to an audience and I ask people by a show of hands to put up their hands if they've got a will, it's usually about half the audience. And that audience might well include lots of people who are parents. And for me, that's always astonishing, that parents, I mean, obviously there'll be an element of illiteracy or ignorance about the need for a will, but for people who know about wills and our parents, it's, this is the public service announcement. Guess what? You really, really, really need a will.
I think there might be 2 things that come with this conversation. The one is, I think a lot of people think, well, I have nothing really to fight over, so it doesn't matter. and the second is I don't want to talk about dying. And actually, both of those things aren't really true. You have to talk about dying, and actually, most people do have something that people will fight over if you don't sort it out beforehand.
Yeah. So let's talk about the dying thing. It's true. It's a psychological phenomenon. We don't want to think about it, and we don't we don't think about our mortality all the time. I hope we don't. We're too busy with the business of living. But it is the one thing we all have in common. One day we're all not going to be here, and so we've had so many unfortunate examples for all of us that if you just keep thinking about the pandemic and all the accidents that happen all around us, it's going to happen, and there is a decent chance that it happens in a way that you have no time to plan and no time to prepare. So let's kind of just for a little while think that it's one thing we can have, and put in place, and then hopefully it's not required for many decades to come. But maybe to your point around people who say, but hang on, I don't have stuff, it doesn't matter. The thing is, when you've got anything, any possession, and you're over the age of 16 or 18, and you die without a will. What's happening is that the mess gets left behind. So someone has to kind of close your accounts. Nowadays we have social media accounts, and you might have bank accounts, and all of that stuff requires paperwork, and it requires someone to have the authority to approach banks or the big institutions to say, unfortunately, this person has died. And if you've not given anyone that power and that authority to do that, all that happens is you just leave behind a mess. And can you imagine trying to explain, for example, to SABC about your TV license that actually I'm sorry, that person's not alive anymore. Those are tough things to deal with. So you do need a will, even if you don't have tens or hundreds or millions in assets. You just need to be able to do it for good order. And then if you have children, you absolutely need a will, because who's the designated authorized person that's allowed to take responsibility for your children? You can't just leave that up to the ether, because you might just be leaving everybody, including your kids, in a heck of a mess.
Okay, so the case to have a will is obviously there. The primary function, I suppose, about a will is that it distributes your possessions according to what you want after you've left us.
Yeah. So we need to have in writing a document, and in this day and age, it seems strange and archaic, but it's the reality. It needs to be a physical document, and it needs to be in writing and signed, and quite a few little legal requirements. But it's there to tell the world what should happen to your possessions, to your stuff, in the event of your death. And then, if you have children, who looks after your children. There are a couple of other important things as well, but the primary thing is this is what happens. On my death, this is what needs to happen with my stuff. Secondly, this is what happens with my children, and then who is the person? And the lawyers love jargon, so this is a piece of jargon. Who's the executor of the estate? And that's the person who gets legal responsibility to do the things on behalf of you, because you're dead. So they in effect become the person that will wind up your estate and sign up all the documents that are required and give all the instructions as if you were still alive. So it's very important in a document like this that those kinds of things are covered, and that you take responsibility for kind of just getting this done.
011-883-0702, 021-446-0567. Your questions for Warren Ingram about wills, voice notes as well on 072-702-1702. Warren, I think there's another perception about being an executor that actually you need to know a lawyer, or if you don't have one in the family or someone you trust who's a lawyer, actually you really can't find an executor. How technical is it? Do you really need to have a mate who's a lawyer?
There are people with no background in law that have successfully wound up an estate, and lots of people, I often hear someone saying to me, I wound up my mother's estate, and I think that it's not impossible. I think you can go through the process. What I would say is, I would certainly not want to be nominated as an executor on anybody's estate. But number one, there's a huge amount of paperwork. Number two, you're dealing with government departments, especially the Master's Office, that in some of the provinces in South Africa is really not up to scratch. And then you're dealing with the banks and all the other institutions. So you're not giving anybody a kind of a gift or an honor by appointing them as an executor, and certainly. I think getting someone who's got experience in winding up estates to do that would, in my view, be better. But certainly you don't need to be a professional. And I think often I'd say to people, if you don't want to appoint some nameless lawyer or some law firm, as the executor, then you can appoint somebody that maybe is just fairly decent with paperwork and fairly up to date with just their own admin. And then just remind them that they're allowed to appoint an agent on your behalf. In other words, the person can be the executor, but they can subcontract a lot of the legwork around winding up an estate if that's what's required. So that would be the kind of best second prize, I think, if you don't want to appoint a legal professional. But gee, I'd think very carefully about it. It's a tricky thing to wind up an estate.
Sure. T. Sapanya's messaged us on 0727021702 saying, "Evening, Stephen. Pardon my ignorance. T, we're learning together. Can a bank you have an account with hold your will for safekeeping even though they didn't draft it?" This is from Table. I don't know if a bank would do that. I mean, I think that's another thing is, where do you actually put a will once you've drafted it?
So I mean, the answer is that they could, but hold your will on your behalf. But I think you're right, Stephen, that they won't do it unless they are the executor as well. So it's not, they won't have a commercial interest in holding a will where they're not the executor. So my suggestion always with this is make sure that when you draft a will, you get two proper copies of the will done at once. So you can keep one in a place in your house where you make sure that you tell people that you trust who are not in your in your household, and I'll explain why now. But so that's one. You tell people, in XYZ drawer in this bedroom is kind of where my will is with all the other pieces of paper that you need to know. And then secondly, if you don't have a law firm that's done the will for you and they keep a copy, keep it at someone else's house that's not in your immediate household. And the reason for that's very simple is, if something happens to your house, let's say you and your family die in a fire, everything's burnt in that house, including some of the people who might have known about where the will is. So making sure that your will is in a different place. So one copy is in a different place and one is in your house is fine. Otherwise, if you do appoint a law firm, they can keep a copy on your behalf.
James from Simonstown says, "It must be remembered wills are ephemeral. 5 minutes after a will has been witnessed and signed, their testator, the person I presume who's made the will, can simply renounce the document and sign a totally new will with new witnesses. An attorney may not know they're holding a sort of redundant will." I mean, this is the stuff of American and now Mexican soap operas and telenovelas. But James is right. Legally, I mean, I could write a will now and tear it all up, or not even tear it all up, and then just go home and write another one.
It's a good point, and I'm not sure if that's a critique or not, but to me that's a benefit, because life does change, and certainly people that you appointed as beneficiaries, so people who you want to leave some money to, if their lives change or they're not around anymore and you want to update your will, one of the things that you write in a will is this is the kind of current valid will, and all previous wills are now null and void, and so he's 100% right. But the thing I like about this flexibility is that It's not a contract where, if you've got a will stored with a company in Joburg and you move to Durban, you don't have to notify that company. You can just simply draft a new will and make sure that that this is the new and current one. So I think it is quite flexible, but the point is right. There could be 5 or 6 copies of your wills if you haven't torn them up and had them shredded and told the people that that previous law firms or whatever that they could be around. But the most recent one, the one that's most current in terms of date, will be the one that will then be your valid will.
Okay. Before we move on, and there are quite a few questions coming in, but I do need to do this. What happens if you die without a will? Technically, where does it go? It goes to government, the problem.
So no. Fortunately, we don't donate all our stuff to government.
Sorry, I meant the problem. But yes, yeah.
Yeah. So there is a law it's called the Intestate Succession Act, and it governs what will happen. But just very kind of summarily, it will be up to a bunch of government officials and then executors appointed by them to determine how your possessions are going to be transferred to your beneficiaries. And remember here that you might have got divorced and have a new life partner, and if your will is old or you don't have a will, the government officials might not know about your life partner, and they might decide to leave some of the assets to your ex-spouse because your ex-spouse is going to be responsible for the children, and you might have had a plan to leave all the assets to your children, with another responsible adult taking account of the money and looking after your children financially. So you can end up in a situation where your possessions get allocated to people that you wouldn't have wanted to benefit, and potentially that your children end up being looked after by someone that you certainly wouldn't have wanted to take responsibility. So what you're leaving behind is just one enormous mess.
And I mean, it's a reminder really of how you actually need to sort of take care of things yourself. All right, we've got more questions about wills. We're going to hear them in just a moment. First, we also have a question. In fact, we've got a voice note or two. Let's hear the voice notes. They've come through on 072 702 1702 about wills for Warren Ingram this evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. Number one, where do I get the will? Do we have something drafted on the internet we download and we write it? Or is there a specific place where we have to go to get the will? The second question, how does a parent choose an executor? What steps must be followed to choose the executor? Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. We'll have an answer for you from Warren in just a moment. 10 minutes to 8, Personal Finance on The Money Show.
When your internet connection fails, does it really matter how fast it is? Business class internet is built for businesses. With remote monitoring, that means faster problem resolution and a backup LTE connection that keeps you online. Your company deserves business class internet because just reboot the router isn't a business strategy. Find reliability at vodacombusiness.co.za. Together, let's build the extraordinary. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Last orders coming through during your drive home or at midnight. Your customers check out whenever, wherever. With seamless payment integration and over 18 ways to get paid, PayFast by Network is built to keep up. And when it's time to grow, funding with Easy Advance helps you take the next step. Always open for late nights, for early starts, for you. Sign up today at payfast.io. PayFast has partnered with TimeBank to offer funding to your business. Medical care, like music, needs continuity, a steady rhythm and pattern, patients attended to on time, medication taken as prescribed. Cut the rhythm, and it falls apart. Right now, global funding cuts are restricting access to healthcare. With your support, Doctors Without Borders can continue to provide medical care to communities worldwide. Because medicine, like music, only works when uninterrupted. Doctors Without Borders, we go there.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, equipping you with efficient and secure cash management solutions for your business.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Warren Ingram, of course, is a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital, and we had a couple of questions coming through on WhatsApp and a voice note. And the one question, we've spoken about an executor a little bit, but where can I get the will? Is there something on the internet that I could use, for example, Warren? And I think I've seen them lying around. You can actually get a sort of vaguely pre-drafted will.
Yeah, there used to be templates, that you could go to the stationery shops and go and buy one and then draft it fill it in. But what I would suggest is, and this is a great initiative by the Law Society, in every province in South Africa next week, there are law firms that have signed up and registered to provide a simple free will to people who come in next week. So if you go onto the Law Society's website and or just search LSSA National Wills Week, you'll see there's I'm looking at their website now, and there's a list of all the provinces, and then select the province and go and find a law firm in your area that will do the will for you. I think it's a great initiative because sometimes these wills can cost you sort of 500 to tens of thousands of rands. So if you have simple requirements, you can't go in there if you're a multimillionaire expecting a really complex will, but you can go there, and I think that for me would be a great initiative for people to take advantage of next week. So I just want to talk about the executor and maybe the guardian, Stephen, because that's easy to get confused. So the executor is the person that takes responsibility for winding up your estate, all the legal processes, etc. But in your will, you should nominate the guardians of your children, and that doesn't have to be the same person as the executor. So the guardians, you might say, I'm happy for my sibling, one of my siblings, to take responsibility, or for a very good friend or somebody. But what you should do in your will is name them, and identify them, and then don't then let them find out, just on the reading of the will that they are now responsible. So for me, that would be the ideal. But they don't have to be the same person. The guardians of your children and the executor of your estate can certainly be two separate people entirely.
Some interesting messages coming through. Grunch says, what happens if I have a will I write myself without help from a lawyer and assign it to someone that I trust? Is that sufficient? Am I right? So long as it's witnessed, I think that might be right.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do that, and then take some time just to do a bit of reading. Again, on there are quite a few good government websites and the Law Society website which will explain what's required for a valid will, because you need two witnesses, and they have to be there, and in you have to sign that will in your in their presence. Those witnesses can't be people who are beneficiaries, so that you can't get your kids to witness it, or your favorite cousin who's going to get half your estate. So there are some important requirements. As I said, it has to be in writing. You have to sign every single page. And it must be done. Your signature must be with. They talk about wet ink. In other words, it can't be an electronic signature. So do your homework properly if you're going to decide to do it yourself, and don't just trust the kind of the first source that you see, and certainly don't look at some sort of influencer's website and think that you've got all the answers there.
We got so many questions actually on this tonight. So Lynn is asking, any advice regarding the situation of the only surviving child's overseas? I live on my own. Can this person be the executor of my affairs without having the power of attorney? They're unable to travel for some time. I imagine so long as you can get the signatures sorted out, in this day and age, that shouldn't be too difficult. It should still be fine.
Yep, I think it's you can appoint that person to be the executor, and then what they could do is appoint an agent in South Africa to take care of most of the legwork that's required, and so that's certainly possible. But I mean, in a situation like that, just do the work with them as well, to say, well, here's a list of good sort of companies that you can appoint as an agent to help you as an executor.
Okay, and then. Where was the question now? So interesting sort of feedback, if you like. Finley says things run smoothly with an attorney. Banks are full of red tape and impersonal. And Co says, based on my experience, people should name a family member or one of the beneficiaries as executor and specify in the will they should get a lawyer to work with that executor. Horrible experience with the bank as an executor. Obviously, everyone will have their own experience, but clearly banks not having an easy night tonight.
Yeah, I think just to understand, I mean, that's you've got a bureaucracy on the one end, which is government and the master's office, and then you've got potentially the bureaucracy of a bank on the other end, and so two bureaucracies trying to kind of work together to wind up something which is usually quite complex, being your estate. So that is why I would say to people, I mean, I don't, I'm certainly not an executive, but I would always want to have someone that's experienced to get this done as fast as possible. And estates nowadays seem, from my kind of anecdotal evidence, to take 2 years at least, and sometimes could take 5 or 10 years if you've got a real mess. So it is quite a process, and certainly you want someone that's efficient and experienced if you have a bit of a complex estate.
And then there's another question around having a trust. Would that actually complicate matters if you now have a will? Does a trust sort of complicate the whole issue?
Not really. In fact, the thing about a trust is that the law sees a trust as a separate person from you. So if you've got most or a chunk of your assets sitting in a trust, the fact that you've died doesn't end the trust at all. The trust carries on living, and so that could help simplify things. What you just need to do is make sure that your will does tie up with the trust. In other words, that it knows that the trust is there, and that you acknowledge that some of the assets need to go into the trust, or the other way around if you're dying without much money in your own name, and there's some costs that need to be covered. But certainly that doesn't necessarily make life more complex. It could in fact make life a bit easier and save you some taxes and estate duties, etc.
Warren Ingram, thanks so much. Co-founder of Galileo Capital. So many questions tonight on wills. National Wills Week next week. You can, through the Law Society, get your will done for free.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, equipping you with efficient and secure cash management solutions for your business.
Ending 1-1 Nigeria, South Africa tonight. The Dow Jones is up 0.4%. The Nasdaq is up 0.14%. And the S&P 500 is up 0.16%. We're back tomorrow. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. We begin in the east of the capital. There appears to be no end in sight to a hostage situation playing out at a home in Mamelodi, east of Pretoria this evening. An off-duty police constable has been holding his mother and nephew captive for almost 13 hours now over a family dispute. Community members and other onlookers are gathered in shock outside the home, watching a large police contingent monitoring the situation. Earlier, the 32-year-old officer fired at least 2 shots, but it's unclear if anyone has been injured. Police have confirmed that a 14-year-old boy managed to escape earlier, leaving the elderly woman and an 18-year-old boy inside the house. Khomotso Modise is in Mamelodi and joins us live now from the scene. Khomotso, what's the latest?
Well, Mikey, it still remains rather tense here in Mamelodi East, where a hostage situation is playing out. I can tell you that from where I'm standing, I can see police negotiators right outside the house where an elderly woman and an 18-year-old boy have been held captive by their 32-year-old son. Now, I am expecting police